Now, the reason why I made that post actually is because a few hours before, MLG had tweeted out a feature they did with a guy in Call of Duty, and he came from some past game, I'd assume like Gears of War or something, and he's a guy where he'd gotten to the top level and he was really good, but he didn't have like a thumb. He had like just a stub, like the first part of the digit or something. Like he was missing like the top part. And yet he got it to a really high level, and he was talking about how, like, it's not a coincidence that he's at the top and he's worked so hard, and that, like, he knows what it takes and all sort of things. It was a really good feature, actually. And it was such a good feature, I thought to myself, on all the things that I've seen MLG do in CS and how they improved and how they changed things up and how they listened to feedback and how they actually took the feedback that made sense and they knew how to communicate with the public, and they didn't take the feedback that didn't make sense, and they found their way around all the scandals in the community and addressed things properly. And in other games, that obviously their home games, the console games, have done a fantastic job and done some World Championship events. So I saw this feature they did, which, by the way, I think was better than any Valve feature, because Valve features are all just a bunch of bullshit about the city he grew up with, what the fucking guy's relationship with family members is, and nothing to do with him as a fucking Counter-Strike player. So I thought this was a great feature, and therefore I made this comment along that sentiment of, like, I wish they were more involved, because I'd love to see features like this in CSGO. I'd love to see more events. I've loved all the events that MLG has done in CSGO, and especially the ones I've been involved in. So it actually has nothing to do with this guy, but as usual, everything's about Reddit. Everything's about Redditors. They have all the information themselves, and if anyone comes up with a good idea, it must be copying Reddit, even though it had nothing to do with it, and you were actually mentally ill. It would seem.
Likewise, this guy says this. He quotes the whole thing as well. And then he says this part. This has 119 points. OP deserves to be downvoted into oblivion and this post removed. He is a liar looking to stir shit up. Really? Is he a liar? Has he put something that was never claimed? No, what's great is the guy who did the quote, even when he made it concise, he even did the correct thing. He put the square brackets and the ... in it, which he's supposed to put to show that you've removed something from it. Which he's not lying at all. He's even saying he fucking removed something. OP's title is not what Shug said. He never claimed it was. You don't know how fucking English works and how the newspaper medium works. Also, ... means that someone is leaving something out. You just said that. He didn't say that. And it's usually important information that someone doesn't want you to have. No, usually it's the other way around. It's the part that's not as important or can't be used in the title, and people will have to get that context themselves because it is the context and therefore is not itself going to be contained within it. Otherwise it wouldn't be called context because you wouldn't need it. It would already be there. As you can see, Shug didn't say anything wrong. He didn't call Reddit bad, etc. Now, if you actually look at what Shug said and the title, he essentially did imply that Reddit were like people who didn't know the game that well, and that's why he didn't like it. That's why he put those concepts together and why he said them one after another, even though they weren't directly connected in that way. He was quite clearly implying as much. So actually, you seem to have done a very poor job of doing that. People do this all the time. They say stuff like, you shouldn't put that quote in the headline. That's not all of the quote. Or even better, they say, wow, you just put this part in the headline to make me click. That's not what the whole article was about. You obviously, because that's the whole article, you fucking idiot, not a headline. A sentence can't be a whole 50 paragraphs because it is a sentence. And a sentence is what paragraphs are made up of, and there are many paragraphs. Are you understanding the concept yet? This is a fucking hologram. It's not a fucking hologram, is it? Where every small part contains all of the whole. Maybe you want holograms for articles. If so, I am not Tupac. But I have got all eyes on me. Now I'm trading war stories. Right, anyway. This sort of a person who made this comment is the little snitch bitch who mischaracterizes shit to someone else to cause drama and fight. What they do is they hear something you said, like, oh, I always thought that guy actually wasn't as good in season 3. And then they go to that guy and they go, you know, that guy said you weren't even good. He said actually he didn't even used to think you were ever good. And then that's not what you said at all. And then that guy goes, what the fuck? And then he responds to that and goes, well, I think he's a fucking cunt. And you go, that guy, and he goes, he says you're a cunt and you should die. And you go, what the? Well, if he's a... It's a little snitch bitch that runs between and tries to cause the drama. This is a stupid person who can't themselves comprehend what someone says. So when it goes through their broken brain, where it's like one of those fucking little, I forget what they're even called, one of those little sequences where like each thing goes along. Like first of all, it pushes a ball that goes along and then tips a little seesaw that drops it into some porridge. Some of the porridge flops out onto the tongue of a toad that goes in, and then it has a little shit, and then the shit comes out, and then a fly comes along, and then the flies eat the shit, and then the flies go off, and then the fly dies over here, and when it dies, it touches a little lever that knocks over, and eventually once it's gone through all this motherfucker's broken brain, it comes out, it's like, hey, just talking shit on the double left, say that the double left only can stream for the monies and milk the donations. He is a piece of shit. Like, yeah, great, thanks, mate.
Get ready for this, where this guy shows he doesn't understand rankings at all. HLTV rankings can't be biased. There's a whole system behind it. Wrong. The bias is built in when they made the system. When they decided how much a tournament gets arbitrarily in terms of points, that's their bias, deciding how much it should be worth. When they decide how many point spots how long something is weighted to drop off in terms of point score, that's biased. They included some weighting. Did they ever explain to you why that was? Did they ever have any general consensus of everyone who looks at the rankings that, yes, it should be weighted that way? No, you all just accept it as the status quo and don't question these things. Then this guy says here, so there's a whole system based on it. Even the top 20 players. Actually, the top 20 players that HLTV.org does have a massive subjective component. Yes, they use some stats. But even if Nico's stats are better, for example, than someone like, I have to pick some off the top of my head here, Olaf at the end of the year, they can put Olaf higher because they feel that he did more in a bigger team, in bigger tournaments earlier in the year, in big matches, whereas Nico didn't get to playoffs as many times, therefore his stats don't count as much. So actually, they go against their own system of stats in order to make those rankings. They are subjectively made by Peter or whoever else does them at HLTV.org. Absolute lie that it's somehow unbiased and that bias can't get involved and that they're just going off numbers and that a computer spits it out. Who do you think programs the computer even in that fantasy sci-fi world where they have some fucking, I am ranking bot 2K57, here are your results. And then what they come out, how the bloody hell did they figure out? But it is from God. I mean, cyber robot Jesus, who has no bias and no one here programmed him, right? He did just evolve out of that primordial ooze. Well, here's another guy who pops up. 11 points. They're total sellouts, but say that on Reddit and you're a heretic. Back in the day, they cared for the scene in the game. Now they care for the cash only. No actual example given as to how, no specifics, because remember, it's not about specifics. It's about a feeling in their body, which they use the logical left hemisphere part of their brain to rationalize and justify using some made-up stories, conjecture and speculation that makes no sense at all. How am I a sellout? Like in this particular scenario, I'm not getting paid by ESL for saying it. I'm not getting paid by Facebook for saying it. I actually don't even think it's about Facebook. I think it's better to actually get rid of this particular scenario. Then this guy, don't worry, the guy who commented there about him being a sellout, he comes back. So this guy says, how is speaking out against monopolies being a sellout? Cunt comes back. Selling to the highest bidder with full knowledge that this won't work is selling out. First of all, I didn't do that. I don't work for ESL, daft cunt. I am hired as an analyst for their events only. I have no say what platform they work on and definitely didn't get some sort of commission or finder's fee for them doing a fucking Facebook deal. Secondly, this shows you how even when they apply their haterism to companies, it goes the same way. So to this guy, ESL cynically sold to the highest bidder, knowing full well that Facebook would be terrible and that they'd have problems and that it wouldn't have a chat function, it wouldn't have clips. They didn't know that at all. That is so outrageous to suggest that ESL knew this. And by the way, I know from behind the scenes, what you think ESL weren't promised a better experience, weren't promised features that would be there, weren't promised that they'd have more hands-on development stuff. Of course they were, you idiot. They didn't just do this deal to tank their whole company for a little bit of short-term money. That is such an outrageous speculation even. And then the idea that a guy who knows nothing, he was never there in any meeting, he's never seen any internal email, he knows fuck all about Facebook and ESL, but he knows that they knew it couldn't have worked. And why couldn't it have worked? Because daft cunt said it couldn't have worked. Sound.
For me, Stixay is like a really solid, serviceable, clean-up style Eddie Carey who just does his job and plays a consistent game, but not above the rim a whole lot of the time. So I don't think he should even be here. I understand he's a rookie, but for me, he's not here. Like, Dardock's the clear winner for me. Stixay I wouldn't have here. I definitely wouldn't have Lawlo. I don't know what... Lawlo for me is like Star Wars The Force Awakens. I don't get what you guys are seeing here. What is so fantastic about him? And don't tell me something like, like with Star Wars, my expectations, I can't set them that high because, it's not for like that. No. We're just asking, is he really good as a top laner? He's not. Now, as a quick aside, before I go into now, setting the stage of how Riot has treated other people in the industry, and you really get kind of a holistic view of these fucking people and what their kind of mentality is towards others, I'll just throw this out there. There might be some people who'll say, come on, Thorin, wow, they want you on your broadcast. You're probably just going to make some sort of edgy joke, aren't you? Well, that's because those people don't know what they're talking about. If you are
in a pub or a bar talking with your friends, you might actually be quite bawdy with your humour. You might have sexual humour. You might make kind of a bit of a dodgy joke that you'd normally never make if you were in front of polite company. Now, if next day you go and visit your grandma, you're not going to say, hey, grandma, oh, this girl was sucking my dick last week, and anyway, I come in the face. Like, no, you're not going to say any of that shit, are you? Why would you say that in front of your grandma? Because you understand the setting, you understand what is appropriate tone, you understand where the line is, and you understand what is the effect my words are going to have. So if I have a talk show, it's my talk show, it's my space, I control it all. Yes, I'm within the terms of service of YouTube, but that's it. I am free to do what I want. So why in that setting would I limit myself? Why would I have to act like I was on the NFL on Sunday? Welcome to a lovely day in Denver, Colorado here, folks. We're looking forward to a humdinger of a get. No, I'm not going to do that, am I? Because it's my space. But I've spouted all these bullshit platitudes about how, they don't just want to make better players, they want to make better humans, and how, it's about like the way we should behave as people and the responsibility and all that stuff. Meanwhile, who's the father of all that shit at Riot Games? It was a guy called Riot Light, right? And if you ever look into some of the stuff about his private life that came out, about how he was allegedly mistreating women, about how he was literally sending like dozens and dozens, allegedly, of unsolicited dick pics to women, and in circumstances where, I believe it was in a scenario of infidelity where he already had like a long-term significant other, and he had these other women he was stringing along, like all sorts of stuff like that. And then this guy's going to lecture you about being a toxic human and about how you getting upset in a video game you pay for and you've invested time into, when someone's dicking around in the competitive mode, the explicitly competitive rank mode, you're not allowed to ever lash out or act in an angry manner in that sense. Meanwhile, not only is Riot Light a piece of shit hypocrite, doesn't live his truth in his own life, but also they have at Riot, as you can see in that Kotaku article, a culture of farting in people's faces in meetings, having people literally have to request that their testicles aren't flicked by their fucking bosses and higher ups. That is the culture within Riot Games themselves. Is that toxic? Is that behaviour that should be encouraged? Is that how your users would be allowed to behave? Would they? No, they'd be fucking banned, wouldn't they? That's why that Kotaku piece opened so many people's eyes. So one of the issues is, even though he wanted the 2 shows a week, because he's not as good at freestyling as me, it meant that I don't think with the waning motivation, he had the time to even watch these games. Like, he was doing other stuff, he was doing his content, etc. A lot of people, I'm amazed how much content he did do, by the way. Him and Yamato kind of two of the only people I've seen actually grind YouTube and really do the kind of schedule I would do. Most people think like a video a week's a big deal, like they're killing it. I know, but I will say this. Don't ever take for granted what people like me and Kelsey and others have done, though. Just because you do one episode of it doesn't mean you can do other stuff. That might exhaust you right there. We're just cut from a different cloth because we've been through so many tours of those wars, as it were. We can go with no sleep. Like, we're just built different. You don't know about that life. You don't fuck all about that life. Especially a lot of you little pissant content creators out there. So let me talk to you for a moment about Loco Doco. Because I feel like this is a guy who's so undervalued and underappreciated as a thinker, as an analyst, and for what he did in the game, quite frankly. His skill set is unique. The places and experiences he's had are unique to anyone in the West. He is so disrespected across the board by fans, by others in the community, in the industry, by fucking Riot Games. Listen, again, other people can poke fun at him. That tends to be their dynamic with him. But don't ever disrespect what he actually did or think that you're superior for some vague, spurious reasons. It's one thing to dislike someone's opinion or the style that they deliver it in. But to just discount them like they're a moron is absurd when we're talking about someone like Loco Doco. Let me tell you for a second who Loco Doco is. This man was a champion as a player. He won one of the early OGN tournaments in Korea on LAN, beating out teams where he played AD carry, and their AD carries were Score, the immortal Score, one of the legendary AD carries later in history. Double Lift, at the time, one of the best breakout talents, one of the best players in the world. Wei Zhao, I considered for a long time the greatest AD carry to ever play the game. Loco Doco's team was beating them, and what era was this? It was Season 2, the age of AD carry power, when they could be OP as fuck. I don't want people doing that shit, so fuck you if you're going to do that thing where you pretend like, who cares about early Season 2? That counts for nothing. This was when we actually had real map positions and you played the actual like bot lane and mid and jungle. Yeah, it hadn't developed the current meta and all the insights, but it still had a lot of the aspects that you could go watch a game then and it'd look vaguely like now, yes, the champions win, etc. But you would understand like the roles people are playing and how they're doing the fights, etc. And also, if it was so easy, why didn't Score, Doublelift and Wei Zhao just win the fucking tournament? We all know some of those were some of the greatest players to ever play League of Legends, particularly Score and Wei Zhao, right?
The Beatles said they get by with a little help from their friends, but I get by with a little help from my Patreon community. And this video was kindly supported by Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Ahmed Hadjou, Bot Pounder 420, Toucan, Animosity, Tobias Bernasconi, Jensen Goh, Tosh, and a special thanks always goes out to my main man Jerky's Minion. Would you like to ask me a question in my monthly video AMA? Do you want teasers to find out who are the upcoming guests? Maybe you want to take part in one of those lengthy but intense esports discussions I have with my donators. Or maybe you want to suggest a guest or a topic that I could cover. Well, if any of those tickle your fancy, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today, where in the description box below there is a Patreon link.